Alright, Shalom. I want to give all praises and honor and glory to the only true God of heaven and earth, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Israel, that is you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Latinos and Native Indians today. Our God's true name is Yahweh, and to his only begotten Son, the Messiah, the Lamb that taketh away the sins of Israel, whose true name is Yahweh Shai. And double honors to my elders and teachers in great millstone, and honors to all the prophets and teachers that carry the spirit of faith and truth within them. My name is Zechariah. Hear my speech concerning the truth, that is the word of the living God. Now I came across this post on Twitter, which made a good point about this beast system, infrastructure that Esau is creating. You think about these data centers that Esau is making, which I in no doubt, believe, speaking as a man, I personally don't doubt it. But I believe that, will ultimately play a part, in prophecy, particularly Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 to verse 18. You could say that's like, the backbone to that, that digital, system that will ultimately involve the mark, the charagma, which is going to be implantable technology, and implantable CHIP, which will be used as an instrument of digital currency, programmable money. And you could say that, these data centers, could play a part. And I speak as a man when I say that. I'm not really into, I'm not really knowledgeable in technology, but I've been doing my research. But anyways, this guy, he made a point about how if they don't have enough robots or human slaves to guard all of these places, they will go up in smoke. And yeah, you think about this system that Esau is trying to create, whether it involve data centers, no matter. You think about, this system in general and the mandates and the wicked, rules or the laws or mandates that may come about, behind it, shall I say. In order for Esau to protect and to enforce these things, to maintain these things, he would have to employ or deploy, shall I say, military troops, to protect, this wicked, system, and to also enforce this wicked system. So the time shall come where Esau, he will deploy troops, military soldiers, units, in the cities of America, and not just America only, but also, in other parts of the world that will be under this newly, demonic system. And you also think about Revelation chapter 13, verse 16. It goes into that implantable technology, the mark, being, the means to buy and sell. And that also including food, for example. So if Esau, comes about with this system, which he will, is prophetic, he most definitely will use troops, because people are going to riot. people are going to crash out. People will rebel. Will resist. You think about these supermarkets, or however food may be distributed in those days, of that prophecy in Revelation chapter 13, verse 16. Esau will have to use troops to guard such food, such goods, because people are going to, riot, plunder, spoil these, these distribution areas. And the reason why I'm saying that, I don't want to say supermarket and stores, because who knows, Esau may very well move these goods to a protected or well-protected areas in, in the cities of America, having troops, military troops, around to protect it. I just don't see, that prophecy coming to pass without people rising up, in their numbers. How Jake do, they rampage stores, local stores and supermarkets, stealing food. And if that is an option for the people, beside taking the mark and submitting to that system, if that is an option, then why would they not choose that option to steal? So Esau, he will have to deploy troops in order to enforce that system in some way, to some degree, using lethal force, and military effort, ultimately, draconian measure, deploying troops in the streets, before distribution areas, if people want to buy and sell, by way of that mark, even with these data centers, the only way for these data centers to keep on running, Esau will have to protect it, because Esau knows, being, cunning and wise in his own way, Esau knows that time shall come when the people will rise up. And this is why Esau had prepared years ago, throughout the years, different modes of actions, different methods in case of a societal event involving riots and insurrection and rebellion, and you could, it's real, documentation, surrounding Esau, using military force in case of a societal event such as that, So Esau, and you also, who knows, you think about technology like robots, robot dogs, to help out or to support this beast system and to protect it and to enforce it in a way. Robot dogs, drones, in fact, I want to ask AI real quick, which I use AI, I don't let it use me, and I guide AI, just to get certain information and outlook on things, and because we know that Esau could use AI for his, for his trickery. So I'm gonna ask AI, this is how I ask AI, from a conspiracy perspective, does this reason conclude, if that's a word I could use, well, let's say this, from conspiracy's perspective, does this reason, imply that the elites would use military force and technology to protect and enforce such a beast system involving implantable technology? And forgive me, I'm not, I ain't no smart person. I'm gonna be real with you, so I'm sure Esau, will provide some information. So I asked AI, from a conspiracy perspective, does this reason imply that the elites would use military force and technology to protect and enforce such a beast system involving implantable technology? So let's see. So this is what AI said: from a conspiracy theory viewpoint, yes, this kind of reasoning often leads directly to the conclusion that the elites would and do use military force, advanced technology, surveillance, and enforcement mechanisms to protect and roll out what many call the beast system, including elements tied to implantable or biometric tech. Because that is prophetic, So it says, in this framework, drawn from Revelation 13 interpretations common in Christian eschatology, sovereign citizen circles, and online truth communities, and you have the true prophets of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. It says large-scale AI data centers like the Stratos project aren't just about cloud computing or profit. They represent the critical infrastructure for total digital surveillance and control. And AI-driven, well, I ain't gonna read that. It says, so it's the infrastructure for total digital surveillance and control. It says for a cashless society where buying and selling requires compliance linked to neural interfaces, implants, and digital IDs or biometrics like Neuralink style tech. A implantable technology will be, a micro C-hip, implantable CHIP will be, the mark, because it's going to be an instrument of this system of programmable money, digital currency, of buying and selling. So it says Rex Jones' comment, which is the post that I was speaking about. It says Rex Jones' comment about locals burning, so local people. Rex Jones' comment about locals burning these in a depression, economic struggle and insecurity and frustration, because frustration will always lead to aggression. There will be a time where the people will become aggressive, ultimately. And that's prophetic as well. 2 Ezra chapter 15 says, let's read this again. It says, Rex Jones' comment about locals burning these in a depression frames them as elite vanity projects. Computer rooms to commune with Satan. Built while people starve. And when you look up what these data centers consume and their effects on the environment and the people is very great. It consumes so much amount of water. It increased people's utility bills. It's so much noise behind the building and the running of this technology. It's affecting the people, and the people are outcrying about this. It says conspiracy thinkers flip this. If the masses rebel or reject the system during crisis, the builders won't let it burn. They'll defend it with overwhelming force, because these facilities are the backbone of the endgame control grid. So this shows you that, Esau will eventually, it's the wise option. It's the wise option, for Esau to, mobilize troops, and to use technology to keep up, to maintain and to protect their agenda, their wicked authority, ultimately. Let me charge my phone before my shit die. Bear with me. Bear with me. I'm charging my phone now, my bad. So let's read this. Why military tech enforcement fits the narrative. From conspiracy perspective, connected dots this way. Strategic military importance. Modern data centers, especially hyperscale AI ones, are increasingly treated as critical national security assets. And Esau is going to protect that which is important to them, which is an asset to them. It says in real world reporting, they've become potential military targets in conflicts because AI powers targeting, intelligence, logistics, and autonomous systems. Governments and contractors already discuss fortifying them with physical security, cyber defenses, and even viewing attacks on them as an act of war. So elite protection. Theorists argue private elites, tech billionaires, BlackRock, investors, etc., for example, partners with the state military industrial complex, Palantir. Surveillance tech and AI contractors are frequently cited as building the beast tools. In collapse scenarios, expect private security, National Guard, or federal force to guard these sites. And it's not just going to be around these sites. I believe, it's doubtless Esau will deploy troops in the cities of America, not just in these private sites, in the cities and in the streets of America, man. Because the scriptures tell you that the cities shall be troubled. And a lot of the trouble is going to come by military force, military measure, government, authority, ultimately. A lot of the trouble. Because there's going to be a strife between the rulership and the power of the rulership, military force, and the people, the common folk. You think about concentration camps, public execution, possibly. This place is going down a dark road, down perdition. It says, To guard these sites, it says, much like how critical infrastructure, power grids, pipelines get protected now, drones, AI, surveillance, predictive policing, and directed energy or autonomous systems would enforce it. It says, implantable compliance tech tie-in. The B system requires universal tracking. Data centers enable the databases, AI analytics, blockchain, CBDC ledgers, and neural interfaces. If people resist, refusing to mark, for example, and the digital wallets and, digital ID and stuff like that, the system would use force multipliers, it's hard to say this, algorithmic enforcement, asset freeze, drone patrols, and militarized response. So there's going to be military force behind that prophecy in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verse 16 to verse 18. Now let me ask AI. In order for the elites to cause many to receive such technology, in their bodies, and to comply with the unethical, let's say that, unethical means of buying and selling, and to refrain from stealing and rioting, what would, and I'm gonna read it again so you could, so you can understand what I'm asking AI. So I asked AI this: in order for the elites to cause many to receive such technology in their body, and to comply with the unethical means of buying and selling, and to refrain from stealing and rioting, would elites use military and technology force? Now, again, I already know, according to the understanding and wisdom that Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai have given me, and the wisdom and the understanding which I've heard and learned from the prophets, I already know, there's going to be a lot of death behind, that prophecy, persecution. Even some of you believers will be imprisoned and literally executed for the rejection of this technology and this system, ultimately. And this is prophetic. Revelation chapter 20, Revelation chapter 2, verse 10. Isaiah speaks about, there's something else. Isaiah, I think chapter 59 speaks about the enemy shall come in like a flood. So the time shall come where military force will draw near unto some of the members of the church, and possibly, the majority of the members of the church. Now, some will have to be in prison. Some will have to be executed. to glorify God in their sacrifice and in their suffering, but you're going to receive your victory and your salvation and your resurrection anyways, but those elect who are predestined to survive it all and to escape it all, they're going to have divine intervention, which those who are predestined to make that great level of sacrifice, imprisonment, and being persecuted, the Lord's not going to have you go out how the wicked go out. You're just going to suffer, that measure and be resurrected. And that's an honorable thing, But not all the elect will have to go through that, For whoever the Lord have chose, that's what it's going to be, And remember, I said this in the past and I'll say it again. To die in the faith, to die in Yahushua is nothing less than the continuance of life. But the loss of faith, the loss of Yahushua, though you may breathe and still be breathing, that is equal to the loss of life. Because you will have no resurrection and no salvation. And you will not make it when Yahushua come. And ultimately, you will have your part in the second death. So let me say it again. To die in the faith is nothing less than the continuance of life. It is equal than the continuance of life. But to lose the faith, it is equal to the loss of life. So I'm gonna ask AI this, and let's see what AI, says. So this shows you, man, we gonna need that divine intervention. That pure influence on our side. That same influence that was with Israel back then. With the prophets, with Samson, with Yahushua. We gonna need the power of God. And the only way to access that power of God is through Yahushua. Because he holds the fullness of the authority and power of God, because it was given to him by God. So the only way to access the presence of God is, wherein there is mercy and safety and goodness, is through Yahushua. Because everything was given to Yahushua, even you elect. Life and death, or the power over life and death, was given to Yahushua. So look towards, ultimately look towards Yahweh by way of Yahushua. It says, from a conspiracy theory perspective, yes, the logic of the beast strongly implies that the elites would deploy military, technological, and coercive force to enforce widespread adoption of implantable technology or biometric technology for economic compliance, behavioral control, and suppression of unrest like stealing or rioting. The mark enables buying and selling. That's heavily implied in the scriptures. It says, while tying into total alliance and control. In this view, data centers, AI, CBDCs, digital IDs, and no doubt, these all will have a connection. It says, and implants form the infrastructure. It says, compliance is involuntary long-term. Resistance opting out, such as opting out, rioting, or operating outside the system during scarcity, threatens the entire architecture. Therefore, enforcement escalates beyond incentives, such as convenience and UBI. Yeah, and that's not going to be, the main motive. Those motivators is not enough. Yeah, it may be more comfortable than going without, that system, which the elect is going to go without it. Let me just say that first and foremost. And they will have what they need according to the power and goodness of God. Ultimately, the Lord will take care of the elect. And UBI promises, you think about universal basic income. And Esau, he's going to use free money, using that mark as an instrument of that free money, as an incentive, as a motivator for the people to take it. But that's not going to be what's going to that's not going to lead to total compliance of the majority. Now the scriptures tell you that he's going to cause many, he's going to cause all, rich and poor, free and bond, and small and great. So it's going to be a trend, a direction that the majority of society will go through, or go in, shall I say. So these certain incentives will not be enough. There's going to be a use of fear, that Esau will use. Esau will use fear and strength to uphold the system, if that makes sense. It says how force fits the nature. Military physical protection of the grid. Hyperscale data centers and AI infrastructure are already framed as critical national security assets. We already read something like that, It says akin to power grids or military bases, real-world developments show them as potential war targets. We already read something like that, so I may skip this. And may skip this. So technological enforcement, AI surveillance, predictive analytics, drone patrols, and automated lockdowns, algorithmic financial control, such as freezing accounts in CBDC system for non-compliance or social harm like rioting, act as a force multipliers. It says implants or biometrics could enable direct monitoring, access control, or even behavioral nudges, restrictions. It says fuel speculation that this tech starts with enhancement for soldiers but scales to population control. And I think this is that little part that I just read is going into because those old conspiracies about soldiers being enhanced and stuff like that. And I'm of the mind that which it may not be a conspiracy, who knows? I can't say 100% certain. The only thing that's certain is what's written in the Bible. So the Esau will certainly cause many to receive the mark because it's prophesied. But anyways, so like thinking right now, I'm of the mind that Esau will first put this technology, and put this digital system, over his soldiers first, his military personnel first, his military power first. Those military, people who are part of the military, the Navy and stuff like that. I'm sure that Esau will first target them and put that digital leash on them first. And when you think about that, you know, you know, when that happens, Esau will have total control over these military members. You know, they got that chip in them. You know, they're controlled by this digital system. There ain't gonna be no disobedience, no disobeying command, the chain of command, no none of that. So they're gonna carry out even draconian and severe and grievous measures and missions, you know, for all we know. And I speak as a man when I say that. You know, it's logical, you know. Anyways, compliance, this is the point I want to get. Compliance for buying and selling and behavior. The system rewards compliance, access to funds, jobs, and services. And this is true, starting with the elder apostles on down, you know, of Great Millstone, have been warning of this, you know, according to the word and will of God. It says, and punishes deviation and conspiracy lore during engineered scarcity or great reset, chaos. You know, and we believe that a famine is coming, and we believe, not just some of us, a lot of us believe that it's going to be engineered, controlled, and we understand, we understand, that God, he can use the evil to bring about evil to the evil, if that makes sense, because he creates the evil, So when it comes to things like famine, which is a divine punishment, sent from God, he could use man to engineer such a famine, and this is possibly what we're seeing now, without a doubt. From my perspective, this is what we're seeing now. An engineering of scarcity on our earth. It says non-participants can't easily buy or trade, leading to desperation. To prevent widespread thefts and riots, the response combines tech with kinetic force, such as policing, curfews, and asset seizures. Transaction blocks. So in a way, you're going to be like blacklisted, and orchestrated from society, and there's going to be a threat of your life. Kinetic force goes into military boots on ground, military troops. So policing, curfews, asset seizures. Historical parallels cited include digital IDs becoming mandatory for work, services in places like the UK, CBDC pilots with programmable money. And you have, different nations, becoming more digitalized like this, advancing, digitalization, So, just make them, certain points, So military in the streets, it's inevitable. It says this: the military in the streets is not just plausible, it's seen as the inevitable enforcement arm of the emerging beast system. And again, we use AI, we don't let it use us. And already, the questions I be asking, I already be knowing it. I just, get certain information, and see exactly, how it says it and what it says, And for, you're going to have things like chipping stations, because this technology got to be distributed, implanted. So you're going to have chipping stations, certain sites where in the cities, in different areas of society where people will have to go and take it, I'm gonna close off on that. In fact, let's get one more. I don't think I spoke scripturally, but and I referenced certain scripture. Let's get some scriptures real quick. Let's get Isaiah chapter 59. Isaiah chapter 59, verse 19, it says, "So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun, when the enemy shall come in like a flood." And speaking in future tense, the enemy will surely come. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up his standard against them. So a divine intervention, for you elect in such a trouble, that will surely come ultimately. In fact, let's get Revelation chapter 12. This one clear scripture that implies such a draconian measure of the elites of military force. Revelation chapter 12, verse 12, it says, "Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he have but a short time." So when it says the devil, it's not speaking about the spiritual demon Satan, but speaking about the Esau Edom. The so-called white man, particularly those in position of power and authority and having control over military force, they're going to come against the people, with great wrath. It says, because he knows that he have but a short time. And a lot of it is going to come by, you want these? A lot of it is going to come by such, kinetic force, as it says. Also draconian measures, just severe and harsh legislations and laws, and just dystopian-like rule, as well. Let's go to the book of 2nd Esdras real quick. Let's get chapter 16. Shut up, boy. Verse 68. It says, "For behold, the burning wrath of a great multitude is kindled over you, and they shall take away certain of you." And you know what that signifies? Capturing. That's self-explanatory. Esau, by way of military force, will capture certain individuals. Maybe these individuals were, resistant, non-compliant, dissident, and we could assume that some of those individuals that will be captured according to prophecy will be some of you believers. It says, "And feed you, being idle with things offered unto idols." It says, "And they that consent unto them shall be had in derision and reproach and trodden underfoot. For there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. They shall be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. For they shall waste and take away their goods and cast them out of their houses. Then shall they be known who are my chosen, and they shall be tried as the gold in a fire, and the chosen is the elect, whoever they may be, and these are the ones who trust and call upon Yahweh Bashim Yahushai in faith, ultimately. It says, "Be ye not afraid, neither doubt, for God is your guide." And the point is already made. I want to give all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai.